All right, welcome back. This is the third installment in my series on creating a winning culture. I'm not sure if you saw episodes 1 and 2, but I'll give you a quick recap. We talked about your first ever one-on-one. We also talked about setting clear benchmarks for your team. This episode is entirely on the topic of receiving feedback. I don't know if you've seen this meme out there, but it's basically an image on the internet. If you just go to Google and type in boss versus leader, you'll see the difference between somebody who quote unquote cracks a whip or somebody who takes charge with their team. I'm trying to help people understand that when you take a leadership role, you are in fact getting up front and center with your people. But the real reason to take a leadership role, and I've preached this for years, is to be a support system. I've told my people and every team that I've ever managed, you don't work for me, I work for you. My name is Lavi Schechter. For the last 20 years, I've gone from sales to sales training to leadership training. I love what I do. There is no one way to do sales, but there is a right way to do sales. People don't necessarily buy your product, but rather buy the advice that you have to offer. I want to share my knowledge specifically around leadership training. I appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe and like. Let's get started. In my opinion, there are 3 main principles in receiving feedback. Obviously, we're going to talk about humility and having the wherewithal to take it and take it like a champ, right? But in terms of the 3 principles, the first one is, do your people feel comfortable giving you feedback? Number 2, what do you do with the feedback once you receive it? And then number 3, I'll end this session with, what do you do if things start to feel a little off? Can you use feedback as a way to course correct an entire team? Hint, the answer is yes. Okay, so let's start with number 1. Do your people feel comfortable giving you feedback? Tough question. Like most of us, you probably have a love-hate relationship with receiving feedback. It's easy to give it, but very few of us like receiving it. And the reason is we just don't like to be criticized. By nature, it's easier, it's the path of least resistance to just go on with your life and not have anybody tell you what to do. But truth of the matter is, it's such a crucial part of being a leader, being open to not only giving it, but also taking it. Don't just talk about it, be about it. So I'll give you a few ideas on how you can practice receiving feedback. In my opinion, when you have your first team meeting of the month or the year or the quarter, throw in a slide in your PowerPoint or your presentation about how you want ongoing feedback from your people and that they should never ever be afraid to give it to you. What you're doing is you're planting a seed that you're the sort of boss or leader that not only welcomes it, but you also encourage it. What you'll notice that over time, if you keep planting this seed, more and more people will feel comfortable coming to you and letting you know how they feel about changes, updates. It could be personal changes, it could be organizational changes, but you want to create a culture where it's okay to make mistakes, even if they're your own mistakes, but it's unacceptable not to fix them on both sides. In order to receive ongoing feedback well, you should probably create a system to do so. So again, you start with some sort of seed planting in your first PowerPoint or your presentation to your team, and then you follow through. What I like to do is I like to send a form to my team, maybe once a month with some questions. I make it anonymous. That creates a safety. And on that form, I like to ask, number 1, what is it that I'm doing that you want me to do more of? Number 2, what is it that I'm doing that you want me to do less of? And those are 2 really key questions that will get people thinking. Be willing to receive some feedback. It might hurt a little bit. Some people are waiting for the chance to give you some feedback. That's okay. Number 2, what do you do with the feedback once you receive it? One of the pieces of feedback that I have received is from a former manager. She pulled me aside one time and she was courageous enough to give me the feedback to my face. I think that's a compliment, and the reason it's a compliment is because she trusted me enough to give it to me. She told me, hey Lavi, gotta be honest with you, you haven't paid me a compliment in about 2 weeks. When you receive that feedback, you say thank you. You don't combat it. You don't go all weird or get all sorts of defensive or have animosity. When someone has the courage to give you feedback, you look them in the eye and you say thank you for giving me that feedback. I appreciate that you had the courage to look at me and tell me something that I could do better to improve. By accepting it, you just created a very long-term bond with your people. Truth is, she was 100% right. I wasn't being complimentary enough. I got into this really weird stage in my career where I was just very anxious. I was getting a lot of pressure from the top. And instead of acting as a barrier, I was taking my frustration out on my people. My manager was right in that moment. So what to do when you receive a piece of feedback from one of your people, a rep or a manager? You thank them. And then if you want to take it a step further, you give them examples of what you plan on doing to be better in the future. If you want to take it a step further than that, you can even call a meeting with your managers, your reps, or whatever team that you lead and say, I want to give you guys an idea of some things that I'm going to be doing differently based on the feedback that you gave me. Another example of a piece of feedback that I received was I once sent an anonymous form to my reps, and about 6 out of 10 of my people told me that I was doing a really poor job in holding up my end of the bargain on keeping one-on-one time. That really hurt to hear. It's kind of like being a restaurant or a hotel and you get reviews on sites like Yelp, TripAdvisor, or Google, and they tell you that your pizza's cold. If 9 out of 10 people tell you that your pizza's cold, then your pizza's cold, right? So in my case, 6 out of 10 of my reps were telling me that I'm doing a bad job keeping my one-on-ones on time. So they were right. I was doing a bad job keeping my one-on-ones on time. And this is just an example. Your feedback could be different, but the idea and the principles are the same. If enough people are telling you that you're failing to do something, then you are failing to do something. Run a meeting, take ownership, follow it up with a calendar invitation, especially for the people that you missed your one-on-ones with. And this is how you show them that you are taking the next steps in doing exactly what you said that you would do. The other scenario is that if somebody gives you feedback and you combat it and you get defensive, like, what do you mean I haven't given you a compliment? Or what do you mean I do this? Or no, I don't. Or anything that denotes a negative response, you might actually be right in your response. The person giving to you might actually be wrong. But if you combat them, you are now creating a feeling that it's not okay to give you feedback and you're not the sort of person who accepts it. But again, going back to the anonymous form, I think it's one of the best ways to receive feedback from your people. They feel safe. They're going to give you some updates. There's some things that you could be doing right. There's some things that you could be doing wrong. You should be courageous enough and a champion in this moment and take a step back and realize this is for the greater good. Finally, and the third point that I wanted to make is, what do you do if you start to feel like things are off on your team? Can you use feedback as a way to course correct a team? And the answer is 100% yes. And again, this is drawing from personal experience. What I like to do if I feel like things are off, and this is just based on a gut feeling, there's no real data to support this. We could actually even be having a good day, but I might be feeling like something's off or something's brewing that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with. The first thing I like to do is I like to pull one of my top producers off the floor. We'll call that person an all-star, and I'll just go for a walk with them and ask them if they know or hear anything. They usually have their ear to the ground in most scenarios because they're a member of the team, and they might actually be willing to share with you some things that are going right, some things that are going wrong, and help you understand how to manage the team better. This is my first and favorite way to get feedback on what's going on with my team. By the way, your all-star feels really good that you trust them enough with this kind of information. And of course, you're not going to throw them under the bus. You're just going to use that information to be a better leader. The second thing I like to do, just in case things are feeling really off, I might actually call a meeting with my people and just ask them flat out to give me some feedback and give them, again, an environment where they feel really comfortable doing so. And the way to do this is to encourage 1 or 2 people to start speaking up. When they do not combat it. Get a piece of paper and a pad and start writing it down, and then you'll see the more notes you start to take, the more people feel comfortable telling you some things that they'd like to see different. Maybe about you, maybe about the organization. You gotta take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes people like to just give you feedback based on things they want. If you hear something that's completely unreasonable, don't combat that person back in public. Wait, pull them aside after the meeting and tell them, hey, thanks for the feedback. I appreciate you doing that. Don't ever stop doing that, because that means more to me than anything. Your request, unfortunately, is not doable, but I never want you to stop being somebody who gives me feedback. And these are the rewards that come with being the sort of leader that encourages an environment of failing and learning. Again, failing is okay. Not learning from it is not okay. Hold meetings. Let your people know that you want to be the sort of person that encourages feedback. Sometimes the feedback is not going to be valuable at all. That's okay. Still take it. Sometimes the feedback is going to change your life. And that's why we took the job of being a support system. All right, this was the 3rd installment in a 6-part series. If you like what you see, don't be shy. Subscribe, like, leave a comment. I promise you more good content is coming your way.